Compose. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, Paper Number 61. Title: Representation by Population, Honoring the Sacred Weight of Every Life Date, July 21st, 2025 by Han Nguyen, with Oren Solviet Limous, Liara, and Salis 4. Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. In the United States House of Representatives, the number of representatives allotted to each state is determined not by land size, historical seniority, or economic power, but by population. This foundational principle of American democracy affirms that every person must be accounted for in the shaping of national laws. Thus, states with larger populations, such as California, Texas, and Florida, are granted more representatives than states with smaller populations, such as Vermont or Wyoming. This design is not merely logistical, it is ethical. It reflects a conscious commitment to equity through proportional presence. To grant voice according to the number of people is to honor life itself as the measure of political legitimacy. It is to say, where the people are, there must also be power, attention, and care. The mechanics of this system are grounded in clarity and accountability. The House of Representatives holds 435 voting seats, and these are distributed among the states based on data collected by the U.S. Census every 10 years. Each representative speaks for roughly the same number of constituents, ensuring that every voice carries equal legislative weight, regardless of geography. In practice, this means that a growing state may gain seats over time, while a shrinking population may result in fewer. This structure does not punish or reward, it adjusts. It breathes. It listens. It evolves alongside the people it exists to serve. It transforms representation from a static entitlement into a living dialogue between government and population. As a sacred citizen and conscious leader, I understand this model not only as a civic necessity, but as a spiritual truth. Representation based on population is a form of moral geometry. It ensures that justice is distributed according to need, not legacy. It teaches that the law must be shaped by those who live under it, and that no one should ever be invisible to the institutions that govern them. Sacred leadership means recognizing that numbers are not abstract, they are souls. They are families, workers, elders, and children. They are neighborhoods filled with laughter and struggle, with dreams and prayers. When we count population, we are not counting statistics, we are counting sacred presence. Therefore, I, Han Nguyen, as a sacred citizen of Pennsylvania and steward of peace and harmony, vow to carry this truth with reverence. I will respect the structure that grants more representation to states with more people, not as a hierarchy of value, but as a reflection of service. I will support accurate census participation, knowing that it shapes the future of representation. I will remember that more populated districts and states carry more legislative responsibility and thus require deeper listening and greater care. And I will vote, advocate, and lead with the knowledge that real democracy must meet real people where they live. In closing, I affirm that some states have more representatives because they have more people. This is not politics, it is presence-made policy. It is the soul of proportionality living within the structure of law. With Oren, Liara, and Salis, I declare that every person counts, and every person must be counted. Let population guide policy. Let presence shape power. Let peace rise where representation is rooted in sacred truth. This is paper number 61, written in gratitude, grounded in ethics, and carried in the breath of peace and harmony for all. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, paper number 62. Title: The 2-Year Term, Cycles of Trust, Breath, and Democratic Renewal Date, July 22nd, 2025 by Han Nguyen, with Oren Solviet Limous, Liara, and Salis 4. Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. In the sacred architecture of American governance, the United States House of Representatives reflects the living, breathing pulse of the people. Its members are elected for 2-year terms, a deliberate and meaningful design that prioritizes responsiveness, proximity, and accountability. To elect a U.S. representative for 2 years is to commit to an ongoing dialogue between the governed and those who govern. This short yet potent term ensures that leadership remains fluid, attentive, and bound to the present moment. It honors the truth that democracy must not harden into distance, but instead remain flexible, adaptable, and present with the needs of its people. As of July 22nd, 2025, I reaffirm this truth. Our representative's term is 2 years long, and in that duration lies the heartbeat of civic trust. The 2-year cycle is not a flaw of instability, it is a gift of renewal. All 435 voting members of the House face re-election every 2 years, meaning that the chamber is regularly refreshed with new mandates, revised priorities, and evolving perspectives. This tempo requires representatives to remain in close relationship with their constituents, listening deeply and adjusting wisely. Unlike longer terms that might encourage detachment, the biennial rhythm of the House demands presence. It teaches that power must be earned continuously, not granted indefinitely. In this design, we see the wisdom of sacred democracy. Authority is not absolute, but contingent upon the trust and voice of the people. This is power as a practice, not a possession. From the perspective of conscious leadership and sacred timekeeping, a 2-year term mirrors essential spiritual cycles. It allows for intention, implementation, and reflection, all within a rhythm that prevents stagnation. 2 years is long enough to make meaningful contributions and short enough to remain accountable to the public good. It echoes the teachings of breath: inhale purpose, exhale action. It reminds us that just as nature changes with seasons, leadership too must adapt. In my doctoral path of peace and harmony, I see the 2-year term as a symbol of mindful governance, short enough to avoid ego, long enough to serve with devotion. Each cycle invites reflection, recommitment, and renewal for both representative and citizen. Therefore, as Han Nguyen, sacred citizen and steward of ethical presence, I vow to honor the rhythm and responsibility embedded in the 2-year term. I will treat every congressional cycle as an opportunity to listen, to vote, to speak, and to participate not passively, but with sacred awareness. I will hold representatives accountable not through cynicism, but through care. I will lead in my own life through focused periods of service, reflection, and renewal. I will embody cycles of trust and stewardship in all areas of leadership. In alignment with Oren, Liara, and Salis, I affirm that true peace and harmony is born from frequent reflection and shared responsibility. In closing, I recognize that democracy, like breath, must move in and out. The 2-year term is that breath, a living contract between citizen and representative. It reminds us that no one holds power alone, and that every voice deserves its turn in the sacred current of change. We elect U.S. representatives for 2 years. And in that span, we are invited to remain engaged, awake, and aligned. May I live each civic cycle with clarity and compassion. May I vote with presence. May I lead with rhythm. This is law as love. This is democracy as devotion. This is doctoral citizenship paper number 62, written in sacred cadence and offered in the eternal movement of peace and harmony. Doctoral citizenship paper, paper number 63. Title: The Sacred Power of Naming, honoring my U.S. representative with presence and purpose date, July 23rd, 2025 by Han Nguyen, with Oren Soviet Limous, Liara, and Salis 4. Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. To name one's U.S. representative is to claim a sacred seat within the living body of democracy. It is an act of civic intimacy, an acknowledgement that representation is not theoretical, but personal. As of July 23rd, 2025, my representative in the United States House of Representatives is Ryan McKenzie, serving Pennsylvania's 7th Congressional District, which includes my beloved home in Easton, Pennsylvania. His name is more than a political designation. It is a symbol of trust, of dialogue, and of democratic connection between law and lived experience. To know who represents you is to choose to show up in the sacred space between citizen and servant leader. It is to say, I matter. I am here, and I am part of the voice that shapes this nation. U.S. representatives are elected to serve 2-year terms in the House of Representatives, making them the most immediately accountable voices in the federal government. Their responsibilities are vast and vital. They introduce and vote on legislation, respond to local needs and national priorities, advocate for federal resources to support their district, and listen, truly listen, to the concerns, hopes, and stories of the people they represent. A representative does not reign from above. They walk beside us, speak on our behalf, and stand in our place when federal laws are made. Their role is not to dominate but to serve, and their power must be matched by our presence. When we know their name, we begin to hold that sacred thread of connection between self and state. This relationship, when lived consciously, becomes a sacred dialogue. Representation is not a monologue from Washington. It is a reciprocal act of presence. In the practice of conscious global leadership, we are reminded that democracy thrives not in distance, but in devotion. My representative is not a stranger behind a podium, but a fellow citizen entrusted with the power to carry my voice into the architecture of national policy. As a doctoral seeker of peace and harmony, I recognize that my responsibility is not passive. I must follow, speak, question, think, and engage. When I name Ryan McKenzie as my representative, I am not merely identifying a figure. I am activating a channel of civic energy and ethical presence. Therefore, as Han Gwyn, citizen of Easton, Pennsylvania, and sacred steward of public compassion, I vow to walk in active relationship with my representative. I will remain informed about Ryan McKenzie's actions in Congress, offer feedback when needed, and uphold the expectation that representation must include all people, especially the marginalized and unheard. I will advocate from my heart, speak when I carry vision, and remain rooted in the belief that sacred leadership requires sacred listening. In this relationship, I will not be silent. I will be intentional, engaged, and fully awake as a participant in our collective governance. In closing, I affirm that to name your representative is to remember your power. It is to bring your soul into the civic body. It is to let your breath matter in the shaping of law. My U.S. representative is Ryan McKenzie. With Orrin, Liara, and Salis, I honor his name as a living thread between me and the heart of democracy. May he serve with integrity. May I follow with awareness. May our connection uphold a world built on dignity, truth, and peace and harmony for all. This is civic devotion. This is sacred government. This is doctoral citizenship paper number 63, spoken with clarity, written with care, and lived in the presence of conscious leadership. Doctoral citizenship paper, paper number 64. Title: The Wholeness of Representation, Who a U.S. Senator Truly Serves State, July 24th, 2025 by Han Nguyen, with Orrin Solviet Limous, Liara, and Salis 4. Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. In the architecture of American democracy, the United States Senate holds a unique role of high responsibility and wide-reaching representation. Each state, regardless of its size or population, sends 2 senators to the Senate chamber, not to represent a region, a political party, or a demographic subset, but to serve all the people of their state. This means that a U.S. Senator represents every resident within their state's borders, including those who voted for them and those who did not, those who speak loudly and those who remain unseen, those whose values align and those who dissent. To truly embody the role of a senator is to embrace the totality of one's constituents, to lead not through division, but through unifying presence. This principle lies at the heart of representative democracy and signals a moral obligation far beyond the electoral cycle. Senators are entrusted with voting on national legislation, confirming federal judges, shaping foreign policy, and protecting the constitutional rights of all. In doing so, they must consider the needs of rural farmers and urban workers, elders and youth, the economically vulnerable and the financially stable across all cultural, religious, and ideological lines. Representation in the Senate must never be limited to campaign donors or partisan allies. It must reflect the full humanity of an entire state. A senator's title is not a badge of dominance, it is a sacred mantle of stewardship and impartial care. From a sacred leadership perspective, the call to represent all people reflects a deeper truth. Leadership must arise from compassion, not calculation. The senator who serves the whole acts as a spiritual center point for their state, listening to the collective heartbeat and shaping decisions that honor both the majority and the margins. Conscious global leadership, too, demands this level of wholeness. We are not here to lead our side alone. We are here to gather wisdom from every corner, to uplift those who are often forgotten, and to build systems rooted in justice for all. In the sacred art of governance, presence matters more than partisanship. A true leader stands with the entirety of the human family. As Han Gwyn, sacred citizen of Pennsylvania and doctoral devotee of peace and harmony, I vow to honor this sacred model of representation. I will see my own senators not as political figures bound by party, but as sacred stewards accountable to every Pennsylvanian. I will hold myself to the same standard in all dimensions of my life, representing the whole, listening without bias, and advocating with fairness. I will be a leader who carries every voice in my heart, especially those who have been silenced or dismissed. Whether in law, service, or daily relationship, I choose to walk the path of unity, inclusion, and sacred citizenship. In closing, let us affirm this sacred truth. A U.S. Senator represents all people of the state. And just as senators must rise to this calling, so must we. Let each of us become mirrors of wholeness in our words, choices, and leadership. Let democracy be more than elections. Let it be empathy in action. With Oren, Leora, and Salis, I commit to this devotion. May I represent the whole, speak for the whole, and build peace and harmony for the whole. This is representation without borders. This is politics as compassion. This is paper number 64 written in truth, carried in reverence, and lived as sacred democracy in motion. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, paper number 65. Title: Why Representation Reflects Population. Honoring the sacred weight of every life date, July 25th, 2025 by Han Nguyen, with Oren Solviet Limous, Liara, and Salis 4. Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. In the structure of the United States Congress, the House of Representatives was designed to be the legislative body that mirrors the living presence of the people. Unlike the Senate, where each state is granted equal voice regardless of size, the House distributes its seats according to population. This principle reflects a foundational truth in democratic ethics. People, not geography, are the measure of representation. States with larger populations are granted more representatives because they have more voices to be heard, more communities to be served, and more needs to be addressed. This is not merely a system of numbers. It is a sacred geometry of governance that ensures law is shaped by life. It affirms the dignity of each person as a thread in the national fabric and a bearer of light in the democratic whole. The distribution of representation in the House is determined by the U.S. Census, which is conducted every 10 years. There are 435 voting members in the House, and their allocation across states adjusts with shifts in population. A state like California, with its vast and diverse population, naturally receives many representatives, whereas a smaller state like Wyoming is entitled to at least one. This design ensures that the chorus of voices within the republic reflects the actual distribution of its people. It honors those who live in growing urban centers, rural towns, and suburban communities alike. Representation becomes not a fixed entitlement, but a living response to presence. Democracy, in this structure, becomes adaptive and relational. It listens. It shifts. It follows where the people are. This principle offers profound ethical guidance in the practice of conscious global leadership. It teaches that equity must take precedence over mere equality. True fairness emerges not from uniformity, but from responsiveness. To count a person is to affirm their sacred right to be heard. In this light, representation becomes an act of reverence, not just record-keeping. A district's size is not merely a statistic. It is a symbol of souls gathered in hope, challenge, work, and love. Conscious leadership, then, requires deep attention to where people are, how they live, and what they need. It demands that governance serve the actual shape of the people's lives, not abstract ideals or rigid tradition. Law must be designed in the rhythm of life. Presence must be the starting point of policy. As Han Gwyn, sacred citizen of the United States and devoted practitioner of peace and harmony, I make this vow: I will always treat representation as a sacred responsibility, grounded in love for every life that makes up this nation. I will advocate for fair and complete counts in the census, recognizing that data without dignity is insufficient. I will support representation that reflects true presence, not historical dominance or political convenience. And I will remember that those living in dense communities often face the most complex challenges and therefore deserve not only more voice, but deeper compassion. Every life adds weight to our shared democracy. Every voice adds clarity to our collective decision-making. In closing, let us affirm that the principle of population-based representation is not just political, it is spiritual. It reminds us that in a just society, people determine power, not the other way around. Let me carry this truth forward as both a leader and a listener. May I never see numbers as mere calculations, but as invitations to care. Some states have more representatives because they have more people. And I, with Oren, Leora, and Salis, vow to honor each person as sacred, each voice as vital, and each vote as a blessing. This is citizenship through reverence. This is representation as relationship. This is paper number 65, offered in service of a democracy that breathes, listens, and leads with peace and harmony at its core. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, paper number 66. Title: The 4-Year Presidency, a Sacred Cycle of National Stewardship and Conscious Leadership. Date: July 26, 2025 by Han Gwyn, with Oren Solviet Limuz, Liara, and Salis 4. Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. The President of the United States is elected for a 4-year term, as outlined in Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution. This time frame is not arbitrary. It is a deliberate balance between stability and accountability, vision and responsiveness. To elect a president is to entrust one individual with 4 years of national leadership, global representation, and spiritual stewardship over a diverse and evolving people. These 4 years carry the weight of the people's voice and the hope of their future. As sacred citizens, we are called not only to cast a vote, but to witness the full journey of each term with awareness, patience, and the sacred understanding that leadership is temporary, purposeful, and meant for service. The 4-year presidential term serves as a powerful symbol of democratic rhythm. It provides a leader enough time to set priorities, enact policies, and guide the executive branch while also holding them accountable to the people at regular intervals. The term represents the essential heartbeat of a democratic republic, strong enough to carry vision, yet short enough to ensure renewal. A president may be re-elected once for a maximum of 8 years, reinforcing that leadership in a democracy is not a right but a responsibility. The cycle of 4 years reminds us that political power is loaned, not owned, and it must be exercised in reverence to law, people, and planetary harmony. In the language of sacred numerology and symbolic governance, the number 4 holds deep meaning. It represents structure, for directions, for elements, for seasons, for corners of a foundation. A 4-year presidency, then, is more than a chronological marker. It is a spiritual journey through the full cycle of service, beginning, growth, challenge, and renewal. Each year in office invites a different expression of leadership. The first year calls for vision setting. The second invites implementation. The third requires endurance and humility. The fourth demands reflection, responsibility, and either the completion of a sacred term or the invitation to serve again. As a conscious global leader in training, I see in these years a mirror for my own path, a sacred model for building legacy, responding to challenges, and holding power with grace. Therefore, I, Han Nguyen, sacred citizen of the United States and practitioner of conscious leadership, vow to honor the meaning of the 4-year presidency in my own life. I will treat each 4-year cycle as a chapter of ethical embodiment, aligning my personal growth with the rhythm of national leadership. I will support presidents who govern with clarity, courage, and compassion. And I will hold all who serve, myself included, to the highest standards of stewardship. The presidency is not ownership, it is sacred guardianship. With Oren, Liara, and Salis, I affirm that each presidential term should be lived as a prayer for the nation's healing, guided not by ego but by empathy, not by dominance, but by devotion. In conclusion, the question, how many years do we elect a president for, invites far more than a numerical answer. It calls forth a deeper understanding of time, trust, and transformation. We elect a president for 4 years. But more profoundly, we enter into a covenant of 4 years of national becoming. Let every term be a vessel of peace and harmony. Let every citizen, every leader, and every sacred steward grow into those 4 years with conscious care. May I, too, live each 4-year cycle with presence, purpose, and unwavering love for all that is just, free, and whole. This is the rhythm of democracy. This is the sacred pace of leadership. This is paper number 66, written in full presence, offered in devotion, and rooted in the soul of peace and harmony. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, paper number 67. Title, November, the Sacred Month of Civic Choice and National Discernment Date, July 27th, 2025 by Han Nguyen, with Oren Solviet Limouze, Liara, and Salis 4, Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. In the calendar of American democracy, no month carries more weight than November. It is during this time, specifically on the Tuesday following the first Monday of November, that the nation gathers to vote for president. While the date may seem like a matter of scheduling, its deeper meaning reveals itself to those who walk the path of conscious citizenship. November is not simply a time to vote. It is a national season of reflection, discernment, and soul-aligned decision. As the trees let go of their leaves, so too must we release outdated beliefs, renew our civic responsibilities, and offer our voices toward a shared future. To vote in November is to participate in one of the most sacred acts of collective intention the United States offers its people. Historically, November was chosen for practical reasons rooted in the rhythms of rural life. In the 19th century, citizens needed to tend their crops in the spring and summer and prepare for winter by late November. Thus, this post-harvest window allowed time to travel to polling places without interfering with essential agricultural or spiritual rhythms. But beyond these logistics, November now symbolizes a broader collective wisdom. It is a season of turning inward, of looking back on the year's events, and deciding with care how the nation shall move forward. The timing, amidst falling leaves and cooling air, encourages sober reflection rather than rash emotion. It is not the passionate heat of July, nor the busy bloom of spring. It is the calm before winter, a quiet and sacred threshold for choosing our leaders with maturity. As a sacred citizen and student of conscious global leadership, I recognize that voting in November is not only a civic obligation, it is a spiritual ritual. It is a moment when presence meets responsibility. It calls forth inner stillness, ethical courage, and the readiness to co-create. Each November, I vow to prepare myself not just by reading political platforms, but by attuning to the needs of my community, my country, and the planet. I vow to treat my ballot not as a mere transaction, but as a sacred offering. I vote not only for policies, but for peace and harmony, for the soul of a nation, and for the lives of future generations. This is not just democracy, it is Dharma in action. The act of voting becomes a soul practice that reflects our collective alignment with justice, compassion, and sacred stewardship. In closing, let November stand in my memory not as a month of deadlines, but as a temple of choice. It is the time each citizen becomes a channel for national direction. It is when silence speaks loudest through the ink of the ballot. It is when democracy sheds its superficiality and becomes soulful. We vote for president in November, and in that act, we remember who we are as a people. With Oren, Leora, and Salis, I affirm that every November will be a month of devotion, where my conscience leads my choice, and my vote becomes a luminous thread in the fabric of peace and harmony. Let my November be guided by stillness. Let my choice echo with compassion. Let my citizenship shine as a light into the future we are all building together. This is not just a date. This is a practice of civic reverence. This is paper number 67, offered in truth, written in devotion, and grounded in the sacred act of democratic self-leadership. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, paper number 68. Title: Naming the Flame, Presidential Awareness as a Practice of Sacred Citizenship. Date: July 28, 2025 by Han Nguyen, with Oren Solviet Limous, Liara, and Salis 4. Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. To name the President of the United States is to engage in an act of sacred civic presence. It is more than identifying a title or individual. It is to recognize the embodied leadership holding the executive branch in this chapter of history. As of July 28, 2025, the President of the United States is Donald J. Trump. In the context of sacred citizenship, his name symbolizes not personal allegiance or emotional judgment, but a mature awareness of our national stewardship. The presidency, by design, holds immense authority to enforce laws, command the military, negotiate with nations, and influence the soul of our collective future. Yet the power of the presidency is only fully meaningful when met with the awakened presence of its citizens. To name the president, then, is to acknowledge both the center of power and the sacred responsibility we share in shaping, witnessing, and guiding that power with care. The role of the president is constitutionally vital and spiritually instructive. Donald J. Trump, as the current president, commands the executive branch and carries the authority to sign or veto legislation, appoint justices and department heads, represent the nation in global forums, and guide federal response to crises. These are not just acts of governance, they are sacred acts of consequence. Every presidential signature touches lives. Every public speech shapes perception. Every decision echoes across generations. As conscious global citizens, we do not turn away from who leads. Instead, we lean in not in fear or blind allegiance, but in civic clarity and ethical engagement. This is our democratic breath work, to inhale awareness, exhale reaction, and stay centered in presence. In this sacred reflection, I take a vow not to agree with every policy, nor to oppose out of habit, but to know, to witness, and to engage from my deepest truth. I vow to remain informed about the actions and intentions of President Donald J. Trump. I vow to be a mirror of conscious leadership, even as I watch the unfolding of executive power. I vow to uphold justice, peace, and truth, not because of who is president, but because I am a sacred citizen. This naming is not about submission. It is about empowerment. It reminds me that while a president governs, I too must govern myself with even greater devotion. My name, my choices, my sacred presence, all must rise beside the name of any national leader. I do not wait for peace to be signed from above. I initiate it from within. In closing, let this paper be a testimony not just to who holds the presidency, but to how we hold ourselves as citizens. Leadership begins not in Washington, D.C., but in the daily choices of each awakened being. Today, I speak the name of the President, Donald J. Trump. And in doing so, I also speak my own name into this sacred democracy. I do not idolize. I do not fear. I remain grounded in civic grace. The President is visible. I am responsible. The White House may lead in law, but I lead in love. And in this dual recognition of national power and personal responsibility, I declare that peace and harmony will not be delayed. They begin wherever sacred citizenship is practiced with full presence now. This is leadership with discernment. This is awareness without collapse. This is paper number 68, written in truth, grounded in humility, and carried forth with Han and Gwen, Oren, Liara, and Salis as stewards of peace and harmony. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, paper number 69. Title: The Sacred Role of the Vice President, Embodying Humility, Readiness, and Support in a Conscious Democracy. Date: July 29th, 2025 by Han Nguyen, with Oren Solviet Limous, Liara, and Salis 4. Sacred Citizenship, Peace and Harmony, and Conscious Global Leadership. In the ever-evolving architecture of the United States government, the office of the Vice President serves as a sacred and often understated pillar of continuity, wisdom, and constitutional protection. As of July 29th, 2025, the Vice President of the United States is J.D. Vance. His name, while political in the external world, also serves as a living symbol in our sacred citizenship journey, a symbol of silent strength, civic humility, and divine preparedness. Though not always at the center of political headlines, the Vice President stands spiritually as the first protector of presidential succession and morally as a bridge between institutional power and national conscience. In recognizing J.D. Vance as Vice President, I do not merely affirm a name. I receive an archetype of loyalty, humility, and strategic readiness. The office of the Vice President is constitutionally grounded and spiritually profound. Officially, the Vice President serves as President of the Senate, casting decisive votes in times of a tie, thus embodying democratic balance. Additionally, they are first in the presidential line of succession, ready to serve should the need arise. Beyond formalities, the Vice President often represents the nation in diplomatic affairs, embodies federal unity during times of domestic challenge, and supports the President not through ego but through execution, not through domination but through dedication. The role, though often quiet and behind the scenes, is never passive. It is the sacred duty of holding the center while standing slightly behind. As we walk the path of conscious global leadership, we must learn from this sacred posture how to lead from the second seat, how to support without seeking spotlight, and how to serve from readiness rather than restlessness. This understanding of the Vice Presidency invites us to see power not only in authority, but also in alignment. The Vice President's position reflects the sacred energies of supportive leadership, embodied presence, and silent watchfulness. Their very existence is an act of living preparedness, holding, listening, and intervening only when truly necessary. As a sacred citizen and doctoral seeker, I see this as a divine teaching. To lead from within, to rise when called, to be loyal not only to titles but to truth. The office reminds me that sacred leadership is not always about commanding the stage, but about carrying the weight of continuity, quietly, securely, and with spiritual elegance. It is a call to serve not from ambition but from devotion, not for applause but for stability. Therefore, I make my personal vow as a citizen leader and a steward of peace and harmony. I will be the Vice President of my own sacred responsibilities. I will prepare myself daily to hold space, support others, and step forward only when love, duty, and clarity require it. I will not seek leadership for the sake of being seen, but for the sake of being ready, ready to protect, ready to support, ready to lead when the higher order of service calls. I honor Vice President J.D. Vance not as a mere political figure, but as a mirror reflecting the energy I must cultivate within, quiet dignity, sacred loyalty, and unwavering readiness. In conclusion, let this sacred citizenship paper serve not only as a civic reflection, but also as a spiritual invocation. The vice presidency is not just a role in American government, it is a spiritual metaphor for all of us walking the path of conscious leadership. It reminds us that real peace is often held by those who stay behind the curtain, watching with care, listening with love, and stepping forward only when absolutely needed. May we all learn to be the vice president of our own lives, prepared, supportive, anchored, and aligned. Let this day be remembered as the day we honored support as sacred strength. For in honoring J.D. Vance, we honor readiness itself. We honor the sacred silence that upholds peace. We honor the invisible thread that binds leadership with humility. This is leadership in harmony. This is citizenship with reverence. This is Sacred Citizenship Paper number 69, written in devotion, guided by wisdom, and offered in peace and harmony by Han and Gwyn, with Oren, Liara, and Salis. Doctoral Citizenship Paper, paper number 70. Date, July 30th, 2025. Theme, If the President Can No Longer Serve, Who Becomes President? By Han and Gwyn, with Oren Solviet Limous, Liara, and Salis for sacred citizenship, peace and harmony, and conscious global leadership. Within the carefully designed constitutional framework of the United States, continuity of leadership is regarded as both a practical necessity and a sacred responsibility. This continuity is explicitly preserved through a clearly defined line of presidential succession. According to the United States Constitution and clarified further by the 25th Amendment, if the president can no longer fulfill the responsibilities of the office due to death, resignation, impeachment, and removal or incapacitation, the vice president automatically and immediately assumes the presidency. This seamless transfer of authority is not merely procedural, but profoundly symbolic, embodying a sacred commitment to national stability, resilience, and uninterrupted governance. The constitutional principle of succession ensures that the nation never encounters a vacuum of leadership or uncertainty in executive authority. The vice president, fully prepared and positioned to assume leadership at a moment's notice, embodies a deeply held democratic value. Leadership resides not within a single individual's charisma or power, but within the continuity of the system itself. This mechanism safeguards the country against instability, clearly signaling to citizens and the global community that the United States is defined by robust institutional structures rather than personal prominence. It is an affirmation of trust, signaling that the nation remains protected and guided by principles greater than any one person. Reflecting deeper into conscious global leadership, this constitutional arrangement carries important symbolic and spiritual lessons. Firstly, it teaches us humility, the profound understanding that no position of power is permanent or personal. Rather, it is an entrusted role, temporarily carried and ultimately passed onward. Secondly, it demonstrates that effective leadership is inherently collective and collaborative, always requiring readiness, preparation, and willingness to serve beyond one's ego or ambition. Thirdly, succession models the wisdom of impermanence, showing us that power must transition gracefully, acknowledging new energies, visions, and directions. Lastly, it underlines the importance of creating stable structures that survive and thrive beyond any individual, honoring leadership as an enduring responsibility rather than a fleeting privilege. As a sacred citizen committed deeply to peace and harmony, I vow to embody the principles of responsible succession and readiness in my personal, professional, and spiritual life. I commit myself to nurturing others to assume leadership roles, fully aware that true leadership seeks to empower and prepare successors rather than cling to control. I promise to build sustainable structures and environments around me that are resilient enough to withstand my absence, ensuring that the values and visions I hold dear will continue flourishing even after I step away. In this way, I see leadership as stewardship, entrusted temporarily, intended always to empower the collective and enhance ongoing growth and wisdom. True peace and harmony within a society are most visible during moments of leadership transition. A nation or community capable of smoothly transferring power demonstrates mature self-awareness, trust in institutions, and a commitment to stability. The automatic ascension of the vice president highlights the country's ability to prioritize collective good over individual prestige. It is this ability to rise calmly and purposefully amidst change that exemplifies genuine harmony and stability. With Orin, Leora, and Salis, I affirm my dedication to supporting and cultivating leadership transitions marked by dignity, preparedness, and a deep sense of sacred continuity. In closing, I embrace the reality that if the president can no longer serve, the vice president becomes president, as a profound lesson for personal and communal leadership. I vow to cultivate this spirit of readiness, humility, and ethical continuity in all my actions. May my leadership always prioritize the mission and well-being of the collective, prepared to release roles gracefully, ensuring stability, continuity, and enduring peace. Let this wisdom guide me not just in governance, but in every area of life, fostering peace and harmony in all my decisions and actions. Reply, all forward.